The HR threw hot coffee on her, and the Korean Mafia boss made them pay. But first, you need to know what kind of woman Maddie was. She never complained. Never fought back. She came in early, and stayed late, and did her job better than everyone around her. The staff saw all of that and still chose her as a target. Moved her food, froze her out, laughed behind her back, every single day. Until one morning it went further than any of them had planned. Hot coffee, her shoulder, her skin burning, and a room full of people who thought it was funny. Maddie walked back to her desk and kept working. She didn't say a word. She didn't know about the camera. She didn't know he had seen the footage. She didn't know he had already picked up his phone. He looked at the screen for a long moment. Then, he made the call that finished 3 careers before the day was over. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is where love hits hard and justice hits harder. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a story. And if you want to keep reading after this video ends, the full written story is on our Gumroad page. The link is in the description. Now, let's get into it. Maddie pressed the elevator button and straightened her folder against her chest. 5th time. Same building. Same marble floor, so white and polished she could see herself in it. Same cold air that hit you the moment the revolving door let you in, like the building was already deciding whether you belonged. She belonged. She had always belonged. The problem was nobody inside had agreed yet. She had applied to Park Global Industries for the first time 5 months ago. The rejection letter came on a Thursday. Polite, short. We have decided to move in a different direction. She had read it twice, folded it, put it in the drawer, and applied again. 2nd time, they called her in for an interview. A woman from HR sat across from her with a smile that didn't reach past her cheekbones and asked questions that had nothing to do with the job. Maddie answered every one of them perfectly. The rejection came 4 days later. 3rd time. 4th time. Same result. Most people would have stopped. Maddie sat down in one of the white chairs along the lobby wall and opened her folder. She had 3 copies of her CV, 5 reference letters, a 1-page summary of her qualifications, clean and direct, no wasted words. She had spent Sunday night ironing the outfit she was wearing right now. She had been at the bus stop at 7:15 to make sure she arrived before 8. She wasn't performing. This was just who she was. She did not look up when the elevator on the far side of the lobby opened. She did not notice the man who stepped out. But he noticed her. Park Yi crossed the lobby the way he crossed every room. Like the room had been waiting for him and had now received what it was waiting for. Dark suit, tailored so precisely it looked like a second skin. Jaw set. Eyes moving in that quiet reading way they always moved. The way a man's eyes move when he has learned that everything in a room is either useful or it is a threat. And it is important to know which. He was 38 years old. His name was on 3 floors of this building. His decisions touched the lives of 4,000 people across 6 countries. And beneath all of that, beneath the boardrooms, and the signed agreements, and the photographs at summits, there was another layer. Darker rooms, older loyalties. Men whose phones he could call at midnight, and who would answer before the 2nd ring. He saw her before he was halfway across the lobby. She was sitting with a folder in her lap, not checking her phone, not performing patience, just present. Completely unhurriedly present, the way people are when they have already made peace with the moment they are in. He had seen her before, same chair, a few months ago, and before that. He slowed his pace, just slightly, just enough. She kept reading her folder. She did not look up. Something about that landed in him and stayed. He kept walking. He stepped into the private elevator and inserted his card, and the doors closed. But, just before they did, he looked back once. Still reading. Still, completely still. He filed her face in the part of his mind he used for things he might need later. Then the elevator took him up and he went back to work. That was the day he decided he was going to find out who she was. 3 floors below the executive suite, Su Yeon Bakes sat behind a desk in an office. She kept 5 degrees colder than the rest of the building. She was the head of human resources at Park Global. She was 34. She was good at her job in the way that a chess player is good at chess. Not because She loved the pieces, but because she loved the board, she knew which people mattered. She knew which conversations to position herself near. She had spent 6 years climbing to this office, and she intended to stay in it. She had also spent 6 years in love with a man who had never once looked at her the way she wanted him to. Park Yi. She had engineered proximity to him for 6 years. Delivered reports in person when email would have done. Stayed late on his late evenings. Volunteered for meetings that put her in the same room. She had learned his coffee order and his document preferences, and the particular tightness in his jaw that meant he was actually interested rather than just polite. He had never moved toward her. Not once. She had decided this was a matter of timing. The right moment had not come. Then she looked at her second monitor, the lobby camera feed, and she saw the woman sitting in the white chair. Madeline Osei. Fourth application. The file was on her desk. She called her assistant without taking her eyes off the screen. Tell her the position is still under review. Her assistant left. Su Yan turned back to her work. She did not know that 11 floors above her, the man she had spent 6 years positioning herself for, was standing at his window, looking down. She did not know that he had already seen Maddie, that he had already asked June to pull her file, that he had read every rejected application and every glowing reference letter and every note in the margin that said, across 4 separate reviews, strong candidate, no clear reason to decline. She did not know that her phone was about to ring. It rang on a Wednesday morning. She answered on the first ring. She always did for him. The woman who applied 4 times, he said. No greeting. He never greeted. Madeline Osei. Hire her. Executive Secretary. My floor. The pause that followed was exactly 1 second too long. Of course, Su Yeon said. Her voice was smooth. Professional, not one crack in it. I'll process the offer today. Good. He ended the call. Su Yeon sat very still with the phone in her hand. Outside her window, Seoul went on being Seoul, busy, indifferent, full of its own noise. Inside her chest, something shifted. Something she could not name yet. Something that would take weeks to become the thing it eventually became. She told her assistant to process the offer. She smoothed her jacket. She went back to work. That was her first mistake. Not the hire. The pause. The 1 second where something true had shown through a crack she hadn't known was there. Park Yi had heard it. He didn't act on it. Not yet. He simply noted it, filed it, and waited. Maddie got the call on a Thursday afternoon. She was at her kitchen table with her laptop open, applying for other jobs the way she always did, because you don't stop moving just because one door is slow. Unknown number. She answered before the second ring. Is this Madeline Osei? Speaking. This is HR at Park Global. We'd like to offer you the executive secretary position. Can you start Monday? She set her pen down. She breathed in, breathed out. She made herself stay in the room, instead of running away with the feeling of it, because she had learned, the hard way, more than once, that big feelings needed to be handled carefully. Not buried. Just held still until you were sure they wouldn't knock you sideways. Monday is perfect, she said. Thank you. She wrote down the details. She thanked the assistant. She ended the call. Then she sat at that kitchen table and looked at the photograph above her stove. Her mother and father, years before she was born. Her mother's laugh. Her father's hand on her mother's shoulder like it had always been there and always would be. I got it, she told them. She got up and ironed her Monday outfit. She arrived at 7:45. 15 minutes early. The same lobby. The same marble. But this time she walked straight past the white chairs. This time she had somewhere to go. The 14th floor had thick carpet and warm light, and a frosted glass panel that separated the executive suite from the rest of the world. Behind it, a young man named June was already at the reception desk. He looked up and smiled. A real one, surprised into him. You're early, he said. I'm always early, she said. He walked her through everything. The filing system, the schedule software, the priority call list. He told her about the coffee. Black, no sugar, 8:15, not before, not after, and about the document organization. Urgency, not alphabetical, and about the phone protocol. Always announce, never transfer blind. She listened. She asked 2 questions. She wrote nothing down. June looked at her for a moment. Then he said, quietly, like he was telling her something true, I think you're going to be fine. I know I am, she said. Park Yi came through the corridor at 8:10 with documents in his hand and his jacket, already buttoned. He stopped at her desk, not a long stop, but deliberate. He looked at her the way she remembered from the lobby. Still. Reading. Madeline Ozzy, he said. Maddie is fine. Good morning, Mr. Park. The Nakamura brief. Secondary files. Before 8:15. They're on your desk, sir. I came in early. Something shifted in his face. Not a smile. Something just before a smile. Good, he said, and walked into his office. She turned back to her screen. She had been ready for this job for 6 years. Now she was finally in the room. She intended to be so good at it that no one, not ever, not for a single day, would be able to question whether she deserved to be here. She got to work. The campaign started in her second week. Her lunch went missing from the refrigerator on a Tuesday. She said nothing. She started keeping her food at her desk. The shared printer developed a habit of producing errors only on her jobs, requiring her to walk to the floor below. She said nothing. She built the extra time into her mornings. In the break room, conversations tapered off whenever she walked in. Not dramatically. Just 2 degrees colder, like someone had turned down a dial somewhere. She said nothing. She made her tea and went back to her desk. Here is what you need to understand about Maddie. Silence was not the same thing as weakness. She was not staying quiet because she was afraid. She was staying quiet because she was watching. Because she was building an inventory of exactly who these people were. And because she had learned, through years of being underestimated, that the most powerful response is sometimes to let people keep showing you who they are. She was patient. She was capable. And she was waiting. The woman leading it was named Ari, 26. HR coordination. Sharp in the way that people who use their intelligence as a weapon are sharp. She had read Su Yeon's signals without being told. The slight coolness in Su Yeon's voice whenever Maddie's name came up, the way Su Yeon's eyes moved to Maddie's desk whenever she visited the floor. Ari understood what that meant. She had spent her career understanding exactly what things like that meant. So she made herself useful in the way Su Yeon couldn't afford to be. She moved the food. She arranged the printer problem. She dropped the small comments. She maintained the social temperature. Then one Thursday afternoon she went too far. Maddie was at the break room kettle. Ari was at the table with Hana and Baum. The conversation had tapered off when Maddie walked in. She wasn't listening. She had learned how to not listen. Not because she couldn't hear, but because she had decided certain frequencies weren't worth her attention. Then Ari's voice dropped into the room like a lit match. Some people get jobs not because they're qualified, she said, to no one in particular. But because someone upstairs takes a special interest. A small sound from Hana, almost a laugh. Maddie's hand on the kettle went still. She stood there for a moment, just a moment. Then she turned around. Ari had of someone who had thrown something and was watching it land. Neutral enough to deny, present enough to enjoy. I applied for this job 5 times over 5 months, Maddie said. Quiet, clear, not a single raised note. I have 6 years of experience and 3 letters of recommendation from department heads. At my previous firm, I was the most qualified candidate. If you'd like to verify that, the hiring file is available through HR. She picked up her mug. You're welcome to check it, she said, and she walked out. Behind her, Ari recovered fast. She rolled her eyes for the room, said something dismissive under her breath, but Maddie had seen the flicker. That half second when the practiced look had cracked at the edges. When Ari had been outmatched, cleanly, by someone who hadn't even raised her voice. Ari didn't forget that. That was the moment the campaign stopped being casual. That was the moment it became something with an intention behind it. And Su Yeon, watching from her floor below, felt the thing in her chest sharpen into something with an edge. Park Yi had 2 lives. The first one everyone knew. The CEO, the charcoal suits, the name above the door. The second one existed in other rooms. Rooms with no addresses. Men whose loyalty had been purchased with things that would never appear in any ledger. He had inherited this world from his father and spent 16 years doing the careful, grinding work of separating it from the corporation. Building walls, reducing the footprint, moving the second life further and further toward the edge of his existence. But it was still there, and the men in it were still his. What he had developed through years of moving between those two worlds was an ability to read people that went beyond skill. It was structural. It was the way he breathed. Show him a person for 30 seconds, and he could tell you whether they were who they said they were. He had been watching Maddie for 6 weeks. He had seen her come in early every single morning. He had seen her solve problems before they reached his desk. He had seen her handle difficult callers without all drama. Manage his calendar with the spatial intelligence of someone who could see the whole week at once and keep his office supplied with things he hadn't yet realized he needed. He had also seen the other things. The way her postures changed slightly when certain people came onto the floor. The controlled neutrality she wore in the break room. The way she was always last to arrive in the shared spaces and first to leave. The posture, always straight, always held. That was not stiffness, but armor. He was gathering information. He was building a picture. He had also, in a part of himself, he had not examined closely enough, started paying attention in a way that had nothing to do with her job performance. He told himself it was professional concern. He was not entirely sure that was true. The Tanaka deal had been in negotiation for 7 months. It was the kind of deal that made finance reporters nervous. A mid-sized Japanese tech firm with supply chain software Park Global needed badly 3 rounds of talks, 2 near collapses, a legal dispute that had almost ended everything in month 5. Park Yi had been patient with it, the way he was patient with most things, completely, without showing the seams. Now it was down to the final stage. 3 days in Osaka for document review and executive sign-off. He told Maddie on a Monday afternoon 2 weeks before. You'll manage Seoul communications during the meetings. I need the secondary contracts, organized by signing tier, before we land. I can have that done on the flight, she said. He looked at her for just a half-second longer than the sentence required. Then, good. Thursday, 8 a.m. She nodded and wrote it down and did not let anything show on her face. What she did not let show was the fact that her mind had gone briefly, unexpectedly quiet. The way it went quiet, sometimes when something important was happening, and the rest of her hadn't caught up yet. She was a professional. This was a professional trip. She packed her carry-on with the precision of someone organizing a work project. Documents, cables, a change of clothes. She was at the airport 15 minutes before their agreed time on Thursday morning. They flew with 3 seats between them. She spent the flight organizing the contracts exactly as promised. Professional. Entirely professional. She barely looked at him. Osaka received them in early autumn. The city was gold and quiet and cool in the way of a place that had decided, a long time ago, that dignity was more interesting than noise. The Tanaka meetings filled the first 2 days. Park Yi moved through them the way he moved through everything. Patient. Precise. Letting silence do the work that most people tried to do with words. Maddie kept pace. She organized, communicated, anticipated. She resolved a document discrepancy at 7 a.m. on the 3rd morning before the first meeting started at 9. The Tanaka executives began directing questions at her directly. By the 2nd afternoon, that meant they had accepted her as someone whose answers counted. She caught Park Yi watching her handle one of those exchanges. She met his gaze. He looked away first. She did not read anything into this. She was very determined not to read anything into anything. The 3rd day was supposed to end at 6. It did not end at 6. A last-minute dispute over an intellectual property clause pushed everything past 9, then past 10. 3 lawyers and 2 translators argued over a single paragraph until 11:30 at night. When the documents were finally signed, the city outside was dark and quiet, and the last useful flight had been gone for hours. Maddie checked the departure board. The morning flight is at 6. We'd need to leave by 4. He looked at his watch. We'll stay. I'll check availability. She tried 4 hotels, all full, a regional conference. She tried a 5th. A sixth. There's the Hotel, she said carefully. A Velielity, 1 room. 4 seconds of silence. Book it, he said. His voice didn't change at all. Yes, sir, she said, and she booked it. The room was large and quiet, and smelled like hinoki wood, and something faintly floral she couldn't name. Paper screens on the windows. Dark, polished wood. Low, furniture. The amber glow of the city, coming through the screens in soft panels of light. A wide bed on one side of the room. Clean floor on the other. They stood just inside the door for a moment. Both of them looking at the room. I'll sleep on the floor, he said. Mr. Park, you really don't, Maddie. She stopped. He had a specific way of saying her name when a conversation was finished. Not unkind. Just complete. He went to the closet. Found the spare blankets. The hotel kept them for exactly this kind of situation. He folded one, arranged a space near the window, checked the surface with one brief press of his hand. Approved it. 4:30, he said. Good night, Mr. Park. Good night. She got into the bed and turned off the lamp. The room settled into amber darkness. She could hear him settle on the floor. Then nothing, just the faint sounds of the city through the paper screens. She closed her eyes. Sleep came quickly. She was grateful. What she wasn't grateful for came next. It always started with the smell. The inside of her parents' car. Her mother's perfume. Her father's peppermints. The particular warm quiet of a Sunday evening drive home from church. Her father taking the long way because there was a street with lights in a tree that he liked to drive past. Then the other smell, the one that didn't belong. Then her father's voice in a register she had never heard before, and never heard again. Low, urgent, afraid. This was a man who laughed at everything. Who called her his sunshine girl, who had never, not once in her 8 years of life sounded like that. Then voices that weren't theirs. Then everything moving too fast, and then too slow, and then stopping. No, she said. She was asleep. She didn't know she'd said it. Don't, she said. Then quieter, like a child asking for something they already know the answer to. Let us be, please. Park Yi was awake. He had been in the shallow layer, present, but not fully there, the way he always slept in unfamiliar rooms. Her voice reached him through it like a hand on his shoulder. He sat up. The room was amber and still. She was in the bed, still asleep, but her face, the composed, held face he had come to know over 2 months, was gone. In its place was something raw. Her brow pulled in, her lips pressed together. Both hands gripping the edge of the blanket, tight, the grip of someone holding on to the last solid thing. No, she said again. Smaller. He got up. He moved to the edge of the bed slowly, the way you move towards something you don't want to startle. He sat and leaned forward and placed his hand very gently in her hair. Hey, he said. Low, steady. You're safe, I'm here. Her face didn't settle. The grip on the blanket tightened. Nothing's going to happen, he said. He kept his hand moving. Slow. Even. I'm right here. Here is something you should know about Park Yi. He was not a gentleman by nature. Gentleness was not a word people used about him. But there are things in a person that come out only in certain rooms, only at certain hours. And at 3 a.m. in Osaka with this woman's hands shaking around the edge of a blanket, something in him simply moved. Without calculation, without deciding to, and did what the moment required. He stayed. He talked to her quietly. He kept his hand in her hair. He didn't try to pull her out of wherever she was. He just stayed in it with her, like a lighthouse. Not moving, just present, just lit. Slowly, the grip on the blanket eased. The tightness in her face softened. Her breathing changed. Then she opened her eyes. He was right there. She looked up at him. He looked down at her. The room was amber and quiet. The paper screens held the city at a distance. Neither of them moved. Something had been building between them for weeks. It had been building quietly, the way water builds behind a dam. Not visible until the moment it isn't contained anymore. Her hand came up and found the back of his. He leaned down. The kiss was quiet. Brief. The kind that happens before either person has decided it will. The kind that arrives as a fact before it arrives as a choice. They were still for a moment after. Then he moved to sit beside her, above the covers. She shifted. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say that would have been better than the silence. He was still there when she fell back to sleep. This time, there was nothing. Just dark. Just quiet. Just the city breathing through the screens. She told him on the flight home. He asked. Not the CEO voice, the other one. The one from 3 in the morning. How long have you had them? She looked out the window at the ocean below. Since I was 8, she said. He waited. She told him about her parents. Emmanuel and Grace Ossie. Her father, who laughed at his own jokes. Her mother, who sang while she cooked. Always off-key, never caring. The Sunday evening. The long way home. The street with the tree and the lights that her father liked to drive past. The red light. 2 men. 2 men. A robbery that didn't need to go the way it went. She was in the back seat, behind her mother's seat. That was why. The emergency responders told her aunt, and her aunt told her years later when she was old enough. That was why she was physically unharmed.
Physically.
I don't have them every night, she said. It's when I'm somewhere new, somewhere I haven't slept before. My brain decides it's a good time to go back. The plane hummed. Below them, the ocean was very blue and very far. I'm sorry, he said. Not reflexive, not filling space. He said it the way he said everything he meant. Completely, without decoration. It was a long time ago, she said. That doesn't make it smaller. She looked at him. He was looking at her, with an expression she had not seen on him in a room this bright. The stillness was still there. But it was different now. Softer at the edges, like water that has stopped holding still. No, she said quietly. It doesn't. They flew the rest of the way home in the kind of silence that happens between 2 people who have just shown each other something real and have decided, without speaking, to be careful with it. His hand rested on the armrest between them. Hers rested beside his. Not touching, but close enough that neither of them moved away. 3 weeks after Oxus, Su Yeon stood in the elevator, going back to her floor, and understood, finally, what she had been feeling. She had just delivered a report to the 14th floor in person. She had worn the green that suited her. She had positioned the conversation perfectly. He had thanked her for the report and asked her to send any follow-up by email. In 6 years, she had collected dozens of these moments. She had always reframed them. Timing, privacy, the wrong day. But standing in that elevator, she looked at her own reflection in the polished doors and felt the reframe stop working. She had been close to something for 6 years, and close was not the same as having it. And something. She didn't know what, she couldn't prove it, had changed on that floor. Something was different in the way the air moved up there. In the way his office door opened and closed. In the way Maddie sat at her desk. The thing in her chest stopped being manageable. She went back to her office. She sat behind her desk. She looked at her hands. She managed it for a few more days. But not forever. The morning it happened was a Tuesday. Maddie got to the break room at 8:40. She was making coffee for a visiting executive who had asked. She stood at the machine with her back to the room, watching the coffee drip, when she heard the door. Su Yoon's footsteps, then Aries, a few steps behind. The sound of the room rearranging itself around them, Hana shifting in her chair. I heard the Osaka trip was quite the experience, Su Yeon said, to the room generally. Her voice was pleasant, conversational. 3 days is a long time to be away. The deal closed, Maddie said. She didn't turn around. Of course it did. A pause. The coffee machine hummed. Must be interesting, traveling with the CEO. Just the 2 of you. It was a work trip. Of course. Another pause. Longer this time. Although some people find ways to make work trips into other things, I suppose it depends on the arrangement. A sound from Aerie. Not quite a laugh. The shape of one. The coffee finished. Maddie reached for the cup. She was going to walk out. She had walked out before. She was very good at walking out. She took 2 steps toward the door. Su Yun turned. The full cup hit Maddie on the left shoulder. Hot, fresh, still steaming. The sound Maddie made was involuntary. A sharp breath, cut off immediately. Her whole body going rigid with the shock of the heat, before it had even registered as pain. The liquid soaked through her blouse in a dark spreading stain. She could feel the burn starting under the fabric. The kind of burn that starts at the surface and threatens to go deeper. She did not scream. She stood there with burning liquid against her skin and she breathed. In, out, carefully, and she did not scream. Ari laughed. One laugh. Short. She caught herself almost immediately and swallowed it. But it was in the room. It was real. Everyone had heard it. Hana's hand went to her mouth. Her eyes went to Maddie. Not unkind, just too slow. Su Yeon looked at her. Her face did the thing that it did. The precise performance of concern. The eyes staying flat while the expression moved around them. I'm so sorry, Su Yeon said. I didn't see you. Maddie looked at her. She had seen a lot of faces in her years of being underestimated. She knew this one. It's fine, she said. She walked out. She went to the supply closet at the end of the corridor. She took a clean cloth from the shelf. She pressed it against the wet fabric. Steadily. Without shaking. Her hands were completely steady. She stood there and breathed and looked at the wall, and did the inventory she had always done. The left shoulder burned. The skin under the fabric was already going red. It would get worse before it got better. She needed to go back to her desk. She had 3 hours of work before the morning briefing. She had documents that needed to be on Park Yi's desk by 9:30. She was not going to let other people's cruelty become her problem when they were the ones who should have to carry it. She went back to her desk. She put on her navy blazer, buttoned it over the soaked blouse. She sat down. She opened her screen. She went back to work. What none of them knew was that there was a camera in the corner of the break room. What none of them had thought about was who had access to that footage. What none of them understood yet was the kind of man who was about to watch it. Park Yi got the footage at 9:15. He watched it on his screen with the door closed and no one else in the room. He watched the whole thing. He watched Su Yeon come in. He watched the conversation. He watched the turn, which was not the turn of someone who hadn't seen another person, and the coffee hitting Maddie's shoulder. He watched Maddie's body go rigid with the shock of the heat. He watched her controlled breathing. He watched her stand there and not scream. He watched Aries laugh. He watched Maddie walk out with her back straight. He sat back in his chair. He was very still. Here is what you need to know about Park Yi when he went still like that. Most people are quiet when they are calm. Park Yi was quiet when he was the opposite of calm. It was the stillness of a man who had already made every decision and was simply organizing the execution. He called June. Conference room B, 11 o'clock. I need legal and corporate oversight there. Pull the employment files for Su Yeon-baek and Ari Yoon. And get Maddie to the medical team before 12. I don't care how, arrange it. June did not ask why. He had worked for Park Yi long enough to know that voice. Yes, sir. Park Yi hung up and continued his morning, exactly as scheduled. He had 2 meetings before 11. He attended both of them. No one in either room would have known, looking at him, that anything was different. But everything was different. And 3 people on the 14th floor were about to find out exactly what that meant. Su Yeon received the calendar notification at 10:50. Conference room B, 11:15. Park Yi. She touched up her lipstick, smoothed her jacket. She went. She walked in and saw the legal officer and the corporate oversight manager already seated at the long table. She sat down across from them. Park Yi was at the head of the table, reading a document. He did not look up when she came in. The footage from the break room this morning has been preserved, he said. Still reading. Legal has a copy. Oversight has a copy. The cold moved through Su Yeon from the base of her spine upward. What happened this morning was not an accident. Mr. Park, he looked up. She stopped. There was nothing in his expression she could use. No anger to apologize around. No frustration to with. Just a settled, complete finality. The look of a man who has already done all the thinking and is here only for the conclusion. You are a senior member of this company's leadership, he said. You used that position to run a campaign against a member of this staff. That campaign started on her first day. This morning it resulted in a physical injury. He paused. The documentation, messages, access logs, statements goes back 2 months. The oversight manager set her tablet on the table. This is a termination meeting, not disciplinary. Su Yeon's mouth went dry. I have been with this company for 6 years, she said. Oh, Parky said. That was long enough to know better. He stood. Your employment is terminated effective now. Your system access was revoked at 10 a.m. Legal will handle the exit terms. He walked out. He didn't look back. Su Yeon sat at that long table in the large, quiet room and felt 6 years of calculations come apart around her. Every positioned conversation, every engineered proximity, every report delivered in person. She had been so close for so long. She had been so certain that close meant something. It had never meant anything at all. The legal officer opened a folder. She sat and listened to what came next. Aries' meeting was shorter, sir. 20 minutes on the 3rd floor with an HR compliance officer and a direct manager. She came out white-faced. She walked through the administrative area without looking at anyone. She picked up her bag from her desk. She left. Hannah received a formal warning. She sat through it with her hands in her lap and her eyes on the desk, and when it was over, she went to the bathroom for 5 minutes before she came back out. She was not a cruel person. She had just been a weak one. The warning gave her a chance to be something different. What she did with it was her own business. 2 other staff received formal notations in their files. By 1:30, the 14th floor was very quiet. The kind of quiet that settles over a place when everyone understands that something has happened that changes the rules, not just the specific thing, the meetings, the terminations, the formal processes. The fact underneath all of it, that someone had been watching, that what had seemed invisible had been seen, that the center of this place did not allow this. People moved more carefully, spoke less. The social geometry that had made Maddie's weeks miserable had collapsed. And in its place was something more honest. The kind of honesty that only comes after something that can't be undone. Maddie came back from the medical team at 2:30. 2nd-degree burn on the left shoulder and upper arm. Clean dressing. Painkillers. 2 weeks of care. She thanked the medic. She put her blazer back on. Carefully. Because the dressing on her shoulder made movement on that side complicated. And she went back to the 14th floor. She was at her desk, opening her afternoon messages, when she heard a knock on the glass partition beside her. She looked up. Park Yi was standing on the other side. He had knocked on her partition. He had come to her. "Come in," she said automatically. Then she heard herself and the corner of her mouth did something. He came to stand beside her desk. He looked at her. The blazer. The careful way she was holding her left arm. "You didn't have to come back today," he said. "There were things to do. There are always things to do. Then I'm always needed." He looked at her for a moment. Su Yeon is no longer with the company. Neither is Eri. She was quiet. She had heard pieces of it. The floor had been talking in the careful way floors talk after significant events. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did. I was handling it. I know you were. No argument in it, just the truth. You've been handling things alone for a long time. You're very good at it." She looked at him. "You don't have to anymore," he said. The floor was quiet around them. Through the frosted glass, the afternoon moved at its careful pace. Through the wide windows beyond that, Seoul was enormous and bright and entirely indifferent. "Go home," he said. "Your shoulder needs rest. The afternoon schedule, June will handle it. The Mercer file needs Maddie." She stopped. He said her name in that voice again. The Osaka voice. The 3 in the morning voice. The one that existed under the title. And the suits, and the 45-floor building with his name on it. She stood. She picked up her bag. She was almost at the elevator when he spoke again. "Maddie." She turned. He was standing at the edge of the executive area. Hands in his pockets. Looking at her with the expression she had first seen in a hotel room in Osaka. The one from before he remembered not to have it. "I'll call tonight," he said, "to check on the shoulder." She looked at him for a long moment. "Okay," she said. She stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. She rode down through 14 floors of marble and glass and ambition, and she leaned against the back wall and let herself feel. Fully, without managing it, everything she had been holding at a careful distance for weeks. The lobby was the same as always. White marble, cold light.
The white chairs along the wall.
She walked past them without stopping. She pushed through the revolving door into the street. The autumn air hit her. Sharp and clean and cool. She stopped on the sidewalk and breathed it. She thought about her father. His laugh. The way he took the long way home, so he could drive past the tree with the lights in it. She thought about her mother, off-key in the kitchen, never caring. She thought about 8 years old and a back seat, and the quiet of waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. And then she thought about a man who had knocked on her partition and come to her. She started walking. She didn't know exactly what came next. She had never needed to. She was the kind of person who showed up for what came next when it arrived, and she was very good at that. Better than most people knew. Better than most people had ever bothered to find out. She knew he would call tonight. She knew she would answer. The street was full of people going home. The city moved around her, loud and bright and indifferent to everything except its own enormous momentum. But somewhere above her, 11 floors up, a man stood at his window, and he watched her go. And for the first time in a very long time, he did not want to look away. If this story moved you, hit the like button right now. It helps more people find this channel, and it means everything to this community. If you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now. New stories go up every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming. Drop a comment below and tell me, what was the moment that hit hardest for you? I read every single one. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next story.